Hi there, I'm Shannon. Ever been part of a family where you're expected to smile while being forgotten? I thought birthdays were meant to be special, until mine disappeared without a trace. A cupcake tossed my way, a laugh I wasn't part of, a silence louder than words. How did a small act of neglect turn into something that shattered everything? Before we dive in, have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Tell me in the comments. I sat on the edge of my bed, looking out the small window framed by the fading curtains. The late afternoon sun warmed the room in Austin, but inside me, there was a quiet chill. Tomorrow was my birthday. I didn't expect a parade or even a surprise party, just a small moment of acknowledgement. Maybe a slice of cake, a word or two, something simple but real. When I stepped into the house, it buzzed with energy. Streamers dangled from the ceiling. Laughter floated from the living room. For a split second, my heart lifted. Maybe they did remember after all. Jody spun around, adjusting a glittery sign that read, "Happy early birthday, Jody." Bright colors, a massive cake, balloons. All for her. I stood there, invisible in my own home. No one noticed my entrance. No one mentioned me. I hovered by the doorway, feeling like a guest at a party thrown for someone else. They sang for her. The living room erupted with cheers. Jody beamed, soaking in the attention like it was oxygen. I clapped too, mechanically, a slow, awkward rhythm that no one heard over the noise. When the cake was wheeled out, a grand three-tiered masterpiece with Jody's name in gold, I dared to ask Darlie in a small voice, Was there another cake?" She glanced at me like I had asked something absurd. "Next year, okay, honey?" Then she turned away, calling for everyone to gather for photos. Later that evening, the house had quieted. Everyone had retreated into the usual spaces, full from celebration. I sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, unsure why I waited. Maybe for someone to remember, maybe for nothing at all. Darlie appeared, rummaging through a shopping bag. She pulled out a cupcake, slightly flattened, its frosting smudged against the plastic. She set it in front of me without a word. No candle, no card, no smile. "There you go, sweetie," she said, already halfway turned to leave. I looked at the crumpled cupcake, then up at the empty kitchen. I forced a smile she didn't stay long enough to see. Later that night, in the soft hush of my room, I lit a match and stuck it into the center of the cupcake. The flame wavered, uncertain, just like me. I closed my eyes and blew it out, whispering to no one, "Maybe one day they'll see me." The cold caught me off guard that morning. I reached instinctively for my favorite jacket, the one I bought with my first paycheck, the one that felt like a quiet badge of independence. My fingers brushed the empty hook by the door, hesitated, searched again. Nothing. I moved from room to room, careful not to draw attention, as if not finding it would somehow be less painful if no one noticed. In the kitchen, Jody lounged over her phone, legs dangling from the counter. She looked up casually and said, "Oh, that jacket? I borrowed it for my date last week. Might have left it somewhere." Might have left it somewhere. Like it was a disposable napkin, not the one thing I had splurged on, the one thing I allowed myself to be proud of. Days passed. I tried to let it go, tried to tell myself it was just a jacket, just a thing. But it lingered, a little hollow under my ribs, every time I opened the closet. Then, one evening, scrolling aimlessly through social media, it hit me. A photo popped up. Jody's friend, smiling brightly at some rooftop party, wearing my jacket. The way she clutched it, posed in it, it was unmistakable. When I confronted Jody, she laughed like I had told her a joke. "Mom thought it was fine to gift it," she said, shrugging, as if the story ended there. Gift it. Flashbacks stitched themselves together in my mind. A recent family barbecue, laughter around the grill, Darlie slipping the jacket onto the shoulders of my cousin's new girlfriend. "It's just a jacket. Don't be so materialistic," she said when I hesitated, trying to protest, but losing my voice halfway through. It was just a jacket, I told myself again, swallowing hard. Just like it was just a cupcake. Just like it was just a birthday. Just like it would always be just me, unseen, unclaimed. I stood in the laundry room later that night, folding an old scarf around my shoulders. The fabric was rough and thin, but it was mine, the last thing they hadn't noticed enough to take. I looked at myself in the dim reflection of the window, at the tired lines forming around my mouth, and whispered, "If they can take this, what else will they take next?" Sometimes, when I closed my eyes at night, I could still feel the long hours, the missed dinners, the deadlines that stretched into early mornings, the loneliness of building something for myself while the world outside blurred. But today, for once, I had something to be proud of. I had climbed another rung at work, a promotion that didn't come easy, that demanded every sliver of patience and sacrifice I had left. For a rare moment, I let myself savor it, the kind of quiet victory you don't shout about but carry like a secret flame in your chest. When I got home, I expected nothing extravagant, maybe a smile, a good job, something. Instead, I walked into a familiar kind of emptiness. Jody lounged on the couch, scrolling her phone, earbuds in. Darlie was in the kitchen, half listening to a soap opera. Ronald clicked through TV channels like he was looking for a reason not to speak. "I got promoted today," I said, standing awkwardly by the door, like a guest waiting for permission to enter. "That's nice, honey," Darlie called, without turning. "Good for you," Ronald grunted, eyes never leaving the screen. Jody threw a thumbs up over her shoulder without even looking up. The words landed with the weight of wet paper. Meaningless, heavy only because of what they lacked. Later, with the small bonus I received, I bought myself a simple necklace. Nothing extravagant, just a silver chain with a tiny star. A reminder that maybe, somewhere, my efforts mattered, even if it was only to myself. When I showed it to them that evening, Darlie wrinkled her nose. "You should have saved that money. Jewelry's useless," she said. Jody snickered from the couch. "Better save it for us. We need it more than you." The laughter stung more than it should have. I tucked the necklace back into the box quietly, fingers trembling just enough to feel it. Dinner that night was quieter than usual. I picked at my plate, not tasting anything. Ronald cleared his throat, slicing through the silence. "You're just lucky," he said, voice heavy with dismissal. "Anybody could have gotten that job. Lucky. Not hardworking, not deserving, just lucky." I felt the words settle over me like wet cement. Heavy, suffocating, permanent. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just smiled that same tired smile they had trained me to wear. After dinner, I retreated to my room. I opened my jewelry box and placed the necklace at the very back, behind pieces no one ever asked about, no one ever noticed. As I closed the lid, I whispered to myself, maybe next time, I won't tell them at all. The smell of overcooked meatloaf filled the kitchen when I walked in. Plates clinked against the worn wooden table as Darlie and Jody set the places with a strange energy. Too quick, too bright. I moved to my usual chair in silence, feeling the eyes flicker my way without words. I already knew the script. I was expected to fix whatever they had broken. Ronald picked up his fork before the prayer even ended, grumbling as he stabbed at his food. "Bills are getting worse," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Might be nice if someone in this house helped a little more." The silence sharpened. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an accusation, aimed straight at me. Darlie chimed in, pushing mashed potatoes around her plate. "You know, it's not just about money, Shannon. It's about family, about pitching in." Jody, without looking up, mumbled, "Yeah, some people act like they're better than the rest of us." Their voices layered over each other, until I couldn't tell who said what anymore. It all sounded the same. A steady drumbeat reminding me that no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. I opened my mouth once, twice, trying to find a foothold to defend myself, but the words crumbled before they ever reached the air. I finished my meal in silence, swallowing every bite like it was laced with glass. I looked around the table, the chipped plates, the dim light bulb swinging slightly from the ceiling, and wondered when the place I called home had become a battlefield I wasn't allowed to win. That night, in my room, I reached for my phone without thinking, scrolling mindlessly until a notification stopped me cold. Jody had posted a video. It was from dinner. Someone must have filmed it while I was speaking. My face twisted mid-sentence. My voice clipped into sound bites that made me sound arrogant, cruel. "Look who's too good for us now," the caption sneered. Laughing emojis littered the comments. Inside jokes, public humiliation, born right inside my own house. I stared at the screen, numb. Friends of Jody's I had never met, strangers, laughing at a twisted version of me, laughing at my hurt. My fingers trembled as I set the phone down. The walls of the room felt closer than before, pressing in. In that moment, something inside me cracked. Not with the rage I might have expected, but with a quiet, devastating certainty. This was not my family anymore. Maybe it never had been. The house was unusually quiet when I stepped through the door. For a moment, I thought maybe they had gone out, but then I spotted it, a gleaming, oversized suitcase leaning casually by the front door. Tags still attached, expensive enough to make my stomach tighten without knowing why. Something about the way it sat there, proud and waiting, unsettled me. I placed my bag down gently, like any sudden movement would shatter whatever fragile illusion still remained. Curious and cautious, I knelt beside the suitcase. Peeking through the unzipped flap, I found branded shopping bags tucked inside. Luxury clothes, cosmetics, electronics. Receipts poked out like little white flags, each printed with charges to a familiar credit card. My credit card. I stumbled back, the world tilting slightly as the realization carved itself into my ribs. They hadn't just borrowed a little. They had gutted me without hesitation, stripping away what little security I had managed to build for myself. Later that evening, the memories sharpened into something crueler. I overheard them in the kitchen. Darlie's voice low and syrupy. "You deserve to treat yourself, Jody. Don't worry about it. She'll understand. She always does." The casualness in her tone sliced through whatever defense I had left. I wasn't family. I was a resource, a living, breathing ATM standing quietly in the corner of their lives. When the phone rang, I already knew who it would be. The credit card company confirmed what my gut had screamed all afternoon: $95,000 in charges in less than 7 days. A number so large, it almost felt fictional. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, hoping it would somehow shield me from the cold pit forming in my stomach. I hung up without saying goodbye. Words didn't matter anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the neat little stack of bills and receipts piled like trophies inside the suitcase. My savings were gone. Years of careful planning, sacrifice, late nights, gone, spent on things that would be worn once, discarded twice, and they hadn't even flinched. The betrayal wasn't in the money. It was in how easily they had decided I was disposable. Quietly, mechanically, I opened my laptop. I canceled the cards, called my bank, started the slow work of closing the doors they had barged through without knocking. As the cursor blinked against the empty screen, I whispered into the thick silence, "You wanted Hawaii? Let's see how you like what comes next." The phone rang just as I stepped out of the shower, steam still curling from the tiles. An unknown number blinked on the screen, and my first instinct was to let it go. I wrapped the towel tighter around me, heart already heavy from days spent navigating around silent betrayals. I answered anyway. The voice on the other end was polite, almost too careful. A representative from my credit card company, calling to verify some unusual activity. I gripped the counter, knuckles whitening, as he read off the list, lavish charges stacking up one after another. $95,000. My mouth moved, but no sound came out. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself not to cry, not to sink. I muttered something that might have been, "Thank you," before hanging up, the air around me buzzing like static. I walked into the kitchen on legs that didn't feel like mine. The smell of burnt toast, the low hum of morning TV, Jody laughing over a TikTok. Everything continued like normal, like they hadn't gutted my life from the inside out. I sat at the table, listening to Ronald complain about the coffee being too weak, Darlie asking if someone could pick up dry cleaning, Jody chattering about new shoes she wanted to buy. They didn't even glance at me. That afternoon, another email arrived. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. The subject line was innocuous. "Your recent stay. Thank you." Inside, the invoice told a different story. Penthouse suite, private spa packages, 5-star dining, limousine service. The total from just one hotel alone sat at over $30,000. Like a slap I had paid for willingly. It wasn't just the money, it was the ease, the entitlement. the complete lack of hesitation in draining me dry. I sat back in my chair, feeling something inside me break in slow motion. Rage, yes, but not the wild shouting kind. This was colder, cleaner, a final severing that left nothing to salvage. I watched them again at dinner, laughing and bickering, passing bowls of food like we were still a family. I wondered if they even remembered whose name was on the bills that kept the lights on, the fridge full, the roof over their heads. I couldn't do this anymore. Later that night, under the soft blue glow of my laptop screen, I typed slowly, deliberately. Searches for real estate lawyers, property transfers, quiet exits. If they could steal everything I had built without blinking, then I could take back what was mine, without a single word wasted. Dinner was announced like it was some sacred event, some family tradition that demanded attendance. I came downstairs anyway, not out of duty but out of curiosity. I wanted to see how far they would push it this time. The table was set, candles lit like we were about to bless a bond that had long since rotted away. I slid into my chair, feeling the weight of 1,000 silent accusations hanging heavy in the air. Ronald cleared his throat, stabbing at his plate like the food had offended him. Jody sighed dramatically, leaning back with an exaggerated pout. "I might need more cash for the trip back," she said, tossing the words into the room like a fishing line, waiting for someone, me, to bite. Ronald chuckled without looking up. "As long as Shannon's wallet works, we'll be just fine." The laughter that followed was brittle, hollow, echoing off the cracked walls and faded photographs. I sat frozen, fork suspended halfway to my mouth. Every sound felt amplified, the scrape of cutlery, the clink of glass, the quiet hum of betrayal settling deeper into my bones. Ronald wasn't done. He wiped his mouth lazily and added, "She should be thankful we let her stay here. All she's good for is paying bills." The words didn't just land, they detonated. Something inside me unraveled, slow and precise, like a seam splitting down the center. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I set my fork down with a soft click, the sound strangely loud in the heavy silence that followed. I looked around the table, at Ronald, at Darlie, at Jody. I saw them clearly now, without the haze of loyalty or hope. There was nothing left to save. I sat back, folding my hands neatly in my lap, feeling the calm certainty that only comes when you know you are already gone. Inside, my mind flipped through every slight, every wound disguised as a joke, every expectation wrapped in guilt. This would be the last dinner I ever shared with them. When I rose from my chair, Ronald barked, "Where do you think you're going?" I didn't flinch. I turned, met his glare with a calm I hadn't known I possessed, and said quietly, "Home, but not this one." The morning broke clear and still. I lay in bed for a moment, listening to the gentle hum of a world that had no idea it was about to change. Downstairs, the familiar clatter of dishes drifted up, ordinary sounds on an extraordinary day. I slipped from the bed and moved through the house on quiet feet. Every photo on the wall, every worn-out piece of furniture, every echo of laughter that never really included me, they all seemed to watch as I passed. Last night's conversation still rang sharp in my ears. Hiding in the hallway, I had heard Darlie's low voice hiss across the kitchen. "We just need to get her to sign some papers. She's tired. She won't fight." Jody had giggled. "She owes us. It's the least she can do." Their words etched themselves into the parts of me I hadn't realized were still tender. This house, this roof I had kept over their heads, was nothing more than another entitlement they planned to take. I tightened my hand around the envelope in my jacket pocket, feeling the weight of signed papers, notarized documents, and the irreversible decisions they carried. The movers were scheduled for noon. The lawyer was already waiting for my signal. There would be no dramatic announcement, no screaming matches, just a clean, cold finality. I packed the last of my things into a single bag, items too precious to leave behind, but not enough to weigh me down. At breakfast, I took my seat as usual, letting them believe for one last moment that they still had power over me. Ronald grunted about the price of milk. Darlie fussed with the jam jar. Jody scrolled through her phone, smiling at something I would never be part of. I poured myself a cup of coffee, took a slow sip. Then, without lifting my eyes from the table, I said, "I sold the house." Silence. Then, the eruption. "What do you mean you sold it?" Ronald's voice cracked like a whip across the room. "You can't do that!" Darlie shrieked, eyes wide with panic. "You selfish bitch!" Jody spat, knocking her chair over as she stood. I stirred my coffee once, twice, calm, steady. "You never owned it," I said softly. "I did." The doorbell rang, the movers. I stood, leaving my untouched breakfast behind. Papers were exchanged at the door, signatures scrawled onto official pages. Ronald shouted. Darlie pleaded. Jody cursed me with words that bounced harmlessly off the armor I had built from years of quiet betrayal. I handed over the keys without a speech, without a tear. There was nothing left to say. I stepped outside, the late morning sun warming my face. For the first time in a long time, the air felt clean. I didn't look back as I climbed into my car, but somewhere between the front gate and the end of the driveway, I glanced once into the rearview mirror, then never again. The morning light slanted across the floor, soft and unhurried. I sat up slowly, blinking against the unfamiliar quiet of my new apartment. Around me, half-unpacked boxes stood like sentinels of a life still waiting to be built. It felt foreign and achingly fragile, but it was mine. I moved through the small kitchen, making coffee without rushing. There was no one waiting for me to fill their cups, no hurried requests, no sharp-edged demands hidden beneath lazy smiles. Only the sound of water boiling, the rich, grounding scent of something simple, done just for me. As I sipped from a chipped mug I'd kept from the old house, images floated back. Ronald shouting, Darlie sobbing, Jody hurling curses sharp enough to wound. I wondered briefly if I had been cruel, if choosing myself had been too steep a price. But even as the thought brushed past, I knew better. There had never been a version of that ending where I could stay and still be whole. A soft knock at the door interrupted my spiral. I opened it to find a letter slipped through, the handwriting unmistakably Velma's, tight, firm, unflinching. "Sometimes leaving isn't abandonment," she wrote, "it's survival." I sat with that truth for a long while, turning it over like a stone in my hand. It fit into the cracks where guilt had tried to take root, smoothing the jagged edges. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from a distant cousin. A few simple lines. Jody had found a part-time job. Ronald was taking odd handyman work. Darlie had been seen at a local food pantry. There was no triumph in the news, no sharp pleasure at their struggle. Just a quiet nod inside me, a soft closing of a chapter they didn't even realize had ended. I started noticing other small victories too, things I hadn't had room to cherish before. Cooking for one without resentment, sleeping through the night without a knot of dread, hanging new curtains in the living room, bright and clumsy and entirely my choice. Healing, I realized, wasn't a line you crossed. It was a slow, stumbling walk where sometimes you tripped, sometimes you stopped, but eventually you moved. The sky outside darkened into a gentle evening as I curled up by the window. The city stretched before me, humming with a life I had only just begun to touch. I thought of them, not with anger, not even with sadness anymore, but with a kind of distant understanding. They had needed me to be small so they could stay comfortable. And now they would have to grow or shrink without me. I rested my forehead against the cool glass and closed my eyes. Maybe forgiveness starts with forgiving yourself first, I whispered into the quiet. And for the first time, it felt true. Life has a strange way of teaching you what you need to know, even if the lessons come wrapped in pain. For years, I thought love meant sacrifice, that loyalty meant silence. But the truth is, real love never demands you to lose yourself. Sometimes walking away isn't about anger or revenge, it's about survival. It's about choosing your own worth when no one else will. Maybe you're at a crossroads too, wondering if it's selfish to choose yourself. Maybe you're carrying the weight of others' expectations, afraid to set it down. I hope my story reminds you, you are allowed to choose peace over duty, healing over guilt. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment when you realized you had to choose yourself? I'd love to hear your story. If you found any part of this journey resonating with your own, please leave a comment below. Type 1 inch if you understand, or let me know where you're watching from. If you didn't connect with this story, tell me why. I'd love to learn from you. And if this touched your heart even a little, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story. We are building a space for healing together.